they're going to be coming. If you all could find a seat, you can, and there'll be more chairs coming in. But we did want to get started. I got elected to introduce the person who will be presenting this tonight. My name is Lynn Goldsmith, and the presenter is Rob Goldsmith. And you know, when you've been married for 50 years, you think you know your spouse pretty well. So Rob got up a couple months ago and he said, I'm going to do this presentation on Project 2025, and I'm going to read it. I said, are you insane? It is 922 pages long. And he said, but if I don't read it and I take what everybody else says about it, that's not right. I want to read it to be able to give what it exactly said. So for a couple of months, he sat in front of the computer for about 2 hours every day and read. And he would get up and say, I gotta go take a shower. But he did read the whole thing, and I don't know how he did it, but he has managed to condense it down. He will not be going over the whole 922 pages. He's going to hit the highlights, but if there are things that you have questions about, he will be very glad to answer them. So here's Rob.
All right. Fabulous turnout. I know it's a hot topic, and thank you all. We're trying to bring in more chairs, and I want to thank the exec committee of the Democrats of Antrim Ranch for helping to set all this up. And thank you for coming, and Lynn's lovely introduction. Wow. Fellow Democrats, we've come a long way in the last month, haven't we? This session was intended to talk about a rather dark subject, and I'll get to that, Project 2025, but it was not intended to be a rally, but I just wanted to go off script for a minute. Let's go to slide 39 on the blue. There you go. There's a certain change in the last month. And as a test here, I'm not going to read every slide, but let me hear you. I ask you, are you fired up? I think I heard that. Are you engaged and excited and energized? We're planning another event. We hope in this room to do another 2,000 postcards like we did last time. We did it in about an hour and 15 minutes. It was wonderful. So thanks to the exec committee. If you signed up on the sign-in sheet in the table on the beginning of the door there, we're 367 members strong, and we have quite a few new members. Do we have any? Raise your hand if you're a new member and you signed up. Awesome, thank you. Welcome. Aaron, you're making a face. What did I do wrong? Okay, good. Anyway, to quote Kamala Harris, let's get down to business. Okay, Lynn, put up the first slide on the other PowerPoint. Project 25, what is it? Why should you care? Who crafted it? Who paid for it? Tell me more, I want to know something about it, I think. That's the topic. It was launched in April of 2023, published by the Heritage Foundation. The full name is Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise, Project 2025. So I have two objectives tonight, really to achieve the impossible, as Lynn did with her introduction. One, I want to inform you about the document, and why should you care, but yet I want to reserve time for your questions along the way if I can. We're not going to do the index, especially with 370 people here, the index cards with the pen where you try to write a question, and we'll just see if we can do a raise of hands along the way. So I ask your patience with that, because Project 2025 is 540,000 words. So how did I try to compress this presentation before midnight? I think what I'll do is do the best I can with this monster. And point number two is I did a presentation with ideas worth discussing. And I learned that many of you are well informed about Project 25, especially because it's been in the press so much lately. So you probably know some of the, or most of the building blocks. So I'll try to get beyond that. But you probably also have in your mind what I call MSNBC talking points. And that's not enough. I've always found that the Democrats of Anthem Ranch are indeed, you're engaged, you're super intelligent, you want to know more information and go deeper. So that's the second impossible objective of tonight. Before we enter the great unknown, let's have some fun. Next slide, please. Who is this? We're going to put a face on Project 2025. Anybody? Perry knows who that is. Emily Murphy. Who is Emily Murphy? Let's go to the next slide, please. She was the General Services Administration Administrator at the end of Trump's one and only administration. A little-known appointee. She didn't budge when the election was over. She did not recognize that the President Biden had been elected. You might remember 16 painful days in November of 2020. She refused to sign the so-called letter of ascertainment, which then opens up resources and confidential national security information and resources which have been appropriated by the U.S. Congress to the transition team for a new president and their team to create, we hope, a seamless transition from one administration to the other. She refused to sign the letter of ascertainment. She held up the transition. I would call that an assault on democracy. We're not going to see that again, are we? My point is that you probably know a little bit about, we'll talk later, about the different positions that want to be designated under Project 2025 to transform civil service positions to politically appointed positions who are acolytes of Donald Trump and would carry out his policies. Emily Murphy puts a face on it that if Trump was elected, we would get thousands of Emily Murphys. That's not going to happen.
Is she still in position?
No, she went off to some, sorry, I'll repeat the questions so that,
Is she still in
yeah, is she still, no, she left in January of 2021 and went off to some think tank thing. That's where so many people end up, in a big salary in a think tank. So remember, just one more point about Emily. Not just an assault on democracy, but cruelty. Do you remember November of 2020 in America, COVID-19? There were 4.3 million COVID infections, 47,000 hospitalizations, and that month, 37,000 Americans died from COVID. And she sat there and would not sign that letter of ascertainment. She would not permit resources to the transition, and she held it up. It was more than just an assault on democracy. We don't need thousands of Emily Murphys in our public service. Onward and upward to slide number 4. Project 2025, what is it? It says, read the slide. The document is the real deal. Go on to the next slide, I hope. So factoids, $22 million to produce this thing, 920 pages. If you print it out, I did not. Just read it on the screen. I didn't used to wear glasses. 540,000 words, 350 authors and contributing writers, and 100 plus advisory organizations that raised money and provided policy input. To quote Vice President-to-be Tim Walz, in this morning's New York Times, when someone takes the time to draw up a playbook, they're going to use it. Back to slide 4, please. They're done. Project 25, the mandate for leadership, the conservative promise. What exactly is that promise? We'll go deeper. Slide 6, please. I'm so glad they're numbered. Sorry if you can't read it. I don't really want to try to get into a situation where I'm reading slides. I'll paraphrase it for speed. But the conservative promise is to restore the family as the centerpiece of American life. Protect our children. Dismantle the administrative state. return self-governance to the American people, defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. And you'll see a lot about this, securing our God-given individual rights. We'll get to that a lot. To live freely, right? The overarching Project 2025 promise. I hope I maybe the next slide. Let's see what happens. Maybe? No, go back. I'm sorry. No, previous slide. The overarching premise is to restore, dismantle, defend, and secure. Okay, slide 7. To recap. Not going too fast, I hope. The Project 2025 is a comprehensive playbook, according to Vice President to be Tim Walz. You've probably seen some literature about so-called 4 pillars. These are the 4 major components of Project 2025. The first is policy development. Not much to develop, folks. With 920 pages, the policies are written, and they're written to quickly, effectively, and without hesitation put in place a conservative administration. Remembering back to the winter and the spring of 2017, Trump's performance attempting to ramp up his administration, what did his people learn from that experience? Go to number 9, please. I'll have to paraphrase this. Trump was elected in part because he promised to stir things up. And in October, he issued a 100-day plan. Among other things, to repeal or replace the Affordable Care Act. Didn't happen. And clean up corruption, whatever that thing was, the swamp. After 100 days, not much happened. He appointed, it's a big thing, the Supreme Court Justice, and if you remember, he pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. According to this author, I didn't say who it was, sorry. Not much happened. The administration's first 100 days, in the main words of this author, was a dud. And that's the purpose for Project 2025. Not to repeat the dud. Try slide 10. According to author Thomas Zimmer and his website, it's called Democracy Americana. They weren't ready in 17, but they'll be ready in 2025. Back to slide 7, please. Just so you know where we are, where we're headed. That was policy development. Yeah, we put a face on Project 2025. We learned some factoids. We understand the document's purpose and its historical backdrop. And we studied what the conservative promise is. Now we move ahead to these 4 pillars. Pillars 1 was policy development. To me, it's a misnomer because the policies have already been written and articulated, and that'll be part 2 of the presentation. We'll get to Pillar 1 and all the policy stuff. Pillar 2 was personnel recruitment. And you really can connect that with appointees training so that they're ready. Personnel recruitment and training, in my mind, go together, all carefully designed to address the chaos of the dud, the dark days of the dud, so that the conservative administration will be ready to go with policy, ready to go with people who are identified as acolytes, and trained and ready to go on day 1. So much of what's going on here with policy is executive orders on day 1. So you have to have the people in place and not repeat the dud. Slide 18. What do I do for that? I'm going to drive you nuts. There you go. Right. Recruiting people and training them are known as warriors. To train an army of political appointees to battle against the deep state bureaucracy. On behalf of a future Trump administration, a centerpiece never before. Maybe you've seen some press in the last 10 days or so about the so-called Presidential Administration Academy. That was a story that was issued, ProPublica journalists disclosed that secret Project 2025 training videos, there were 23 videos, 14 hours of content, 36 speakers on those videos, 29 of which served in the Trump administration or in J.D. Vance's office. When Donald Trump says, I don't know these people, I don't believe in what they're talking about. You know, these are his people, and the Presidential Academy is designed to train those people. You don't want to look at those. I did not look at those videos. I wasn't going to put 23 hours of time into watching those videos. You've probably seen some snippets of it, and I only can take so many showers, and oh boy. You know what? We need a break here. We're going to ask John Oliver for some advice.
When there wasn't a plan in place for what to do once he did. Jared famously toured the Obama White House not long after the election and asked how many of the individuals there would remain into the next administration, to which someone presumably had to tell him, not many, you fucking idiots. You have to hire people yourself, that is what you just won. But that confusion won't happen this time, because Project 2025 is assembling a database of prospective hires, not just for the White House, but across the entire federal government. They'd liken to a conservative LinkedIn. Here's one of the leaders of that effort, John McEntee, making his pitch for people to sign up.
If you want to work and make a difference, you can go to project2025.org. You can apply, you can take the training, you can learn about being a political appointee and how to be effective, which is so important. Okay, you got the job, now what do you do? How do you take on the bureaucracy? How do you do all these things? So that's where we're trying to help just give the president a little leg up on staffing.
It's essentially an open audition for people who might want a new job because they lost their old one back on January the 6th for some reason. And their goal here is clear, to assemble an army of vetted, trained staff who can begin dismantling the administrative state from day one, which is a little weird if you think about it. They're assembling an army of future government bureaucrats who hate the government. If you were interviewing for a job at Cheerios and the interviewer said, why do you want to work here? And you replied, because I hate Cheerios and want to destroy it. You'd be immediately grabbed by security and never seen again. Can the Cheerios fucks around?
A little colorful, but John made his point. Okay. Let's go to slide 11, please. Okay. Now, this is what I mentioned when I talked about Emily Murphy. You may have seen some press about this. In October of 2020, Trump attempted to do this, but it was so late in his administration, again, back to the dud, it was just too late, and he actually, it wasn't implemented. But it's part of Project 2025. It's a new employment category for up to 40,000 federal positions that right now are civil service people who are typically long-term dedicated civil service dedicated people. It will remove them from civil service protection and transform their positions into politically appointed so-called Schedule F, and with the expectation, if not requirement, that they serve at the pleasure of the president, requiring total loyalty to the president and his policies, from cabinet secretaries down to the most junior. Project 2025 requires issuing an executive order to establish Schedule F positions and change those civil service positions on day one. Day one is a driving force behind the 4 pillars. Not to do the dud anymore. How about Project 7? Excuse me, slide 7. Project on the month. Time for a shower again. Pillar number 4 is strategic planning of the 4 pillars. Well, that's easy. No planning is required because the planning's happened. It's a detailed playbook for the initial 180 days and to swiftly reverse policy and take action. You can't say it's any more clear than that to say that strategic planning has already happened. Back to slide 1, please. Staying on task. This is good. Who paid for it? Who crafted it? Quick look at Project 2025 leadership. You know, you've seen a lot of Kevin Roberts in the popular press. Slide 12. Okay. Hard to read, sorry. Kevin Roberts is the president of the Heritage Foundation, certainly been a spokesman throughout all kinds of interviews and articles you may have written. A self-described cultural warrior. He's a resident of Wyoming. There's a lot of people from Wyoming in this thing. I don't know why. A self-described cowboy Catholic. He says, elites, this is in the introduction to Project 2025, elites with a sense of superiority are ruining Washington. We need to understand what time it is in America. Project 2025 seeks to set the course for the conservative movement for many years to come. These people are serious. If you can't see it, Paul Davis and Spencer Kretchen. These guys are joined at the hip. They were the Project 2025 director and associate director. They worked for Ben Carson at the Housing and Urban Development Department, again, in the Trump administration. Davis also worked for the Federalist Society, which is, if you know what that is, I see people shaking their heads, yes. And of course, for the all-powerful Leonard Leo, who runs the Federalist Society. I almost put in my script that I volunteer to make a presentation on that as well in the future, but we'll see if I want to do that. Okay. You see some familiar faces, some jailbirds here. You see Cuccinelli, you see Navarro, and John McAtee was the guy in the John Oliver. A lot of familiar faces. I want to pick on 2 people. One is Gene Hamilton, a real mover and shaker behind 2025. Oh boy, he was the point person under Trump to end the DACA program, revoking temporary protected status for immigrants from Sudan. He created the family separation policy. Remember that? Kids behind fences wrapped in aluminum foil, sleeping on the floor. He's the guy that did it. Gene Hamilton. He was the one that put it together. He serves at America First Legal, along with another happy guy, Stephen Miller. They're joined at the hip. These are superstars. Okay. I like William Perry Pendley. He's the last one on the list. A resident of Cheyenne, Wyoming. You might remember this story. In 2019, he was appointed director of the Bureau of Land Management by Trump. The problem was he served for 424 days, and he was never confirmed by the United States Senate for that position, even though it's required. So he and his position were sued, and federal district judge Brian Morris ruled that he was blocked from serving any further, and he had to leave his job. Mr. Pendley refused to respect and acknowledge the judge's ruling, but he transferred to another job in the Trump administration. Back to slide 1. Real superstars. Let's see. Who paid for this thing? Is the last bullet on that slide. Slide 13. I'm glad you have numbers on the slides. It does jump around. Who paid for it? It was paid for, again, the $22 million by donors to the Heritage Foundation, as well as 100 assisting organizations. In the Project 2025 website, They have a list of what those organizations are, who they are. They have great names, very, names that are engaging. I don't know, they look good to me. Let's take a look at just 3 of them. Protect our kids. Quote, we are citizens united in the belief that today's public schools threaten our children's welfare. The promotion of sexual intimacy, sexual orientation, fluid gender identity far exceeds rightful boundaries. So too is the advancement of Marxist critical theory, the reframing of American history to indoctrinate children into politically driven, misleading narratives. You not like this name, the Foundation for Government Accountability. Sounds good. Where's my checkbook? Website lists their goals. Stop ranked choice voting. That's great. Because it results in trashed ballots and widespread errors. Reject all efforts at diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is a guiding light throughout Project 2025. Because it touts radical leftist, not communist, okay, policy. Stop expansion of Medicaid. This is just, I don't know, this is racism. Enrollment is increasing because able-bodied adults are flooding the healthcare system, not the truly needy. To me, that's a dog whistle. I don't know, it might be dumb, but I'm not stupid, as we say in Alabama. The Ethics and Public Policy Center. What a great name. Sign me up. Seriously, I find their mission statement disturbing. We are an institute dedicated to apply the riches of Jewish and Christian tradition to contemporary American questions of law, culture, and politics. Our priority is to push back against the extreme progressive agenda. We seek to shape the future of Jewish and Christian public witness for all who seek to lead full lives as faith believers. These are the people that are putting up the 10 Commandments in every schoolroom in Louisiana and in Oklahoma, pushing Bible study into the state curriculum. Slide 14. To wrap up this portion of the presentation, and now that you're experts on Project 2025, I have 2 questions for you. 1, visit the sheet that you have on your chair. This is right off it was July, last month, after the Republican National Convention. They published their 16-page platform. And this is, from their website, this is the super drawn down 20 promises. They touted that they didn't need a platform such as been done in the past, really thick notebooks and platform talk. Well, they already have Project 2025 with policy and procedure and action plans, so it was boiled down to these promises. That's a lovely parting gift. Take it with you, please. Such a lovely party. Slide 19. How did I do? Despite the Republican campaign leadership bellowing to the contrary, yes or no, folks, did the principles, rhetoric, objectives, and action plans of Project 2025 feed directly into this party platform that you have in front of you? Yes? Okay. I think so. Number 2, now that you know so many of the people and the organizations behind Project 2025, its leadership, authors, and check writers, do you believe that Trump and his folks don't know much about it? Number 17, please. I don't know these people. That's a picture of Donald Trump on his airplane or some airplane, and that's Kevin Roberts from Project 2025. I don't know these people. So, I think we can stop for questions before I go to part number 2. It's a big group. I'll repeat the question.
Why in heaven's name would they publish this? So we all know know what we're in.
Well, the question is, why would, in heaven's name, would this document be published? I can't answer what went through their minds, but there's a point of pride and preparation and loyalty to the cause and a responsibility to the donor to put up 22 million bucks to put it out there and say, this is our plan. And it's transparent, you know. And I don't know, the world that we live in now, it's hard to keep a secret, you know. Like the videos from the Presidential Leadership Academy. Somebody went to ProPublica and gave them the whole thing. Any other questions before we move on? PowerPoint number 2. Now that you're experts on Project 2025. Slide number 1, please. There's a lot of slides here. Why are there a lot of slides? Bark, all carts, sarcasm aside. The 820 pages that maybe take a shower even more often are the major component of Project 2025. The way they did it, there was a chapter written by an expert, contributing author or authors by federal agency. That's why there were so many slides, like 33 of them, one by one. What I did for ease of presentation is provide for you the name of the agency, the author of that chapter, a little bio about who they are, and then a couple of bullets of what they recommend as part of their Project 2025 action plan. We don't have time, I hope, to go through every single one of those federal agencies and all those slides, but I chose a representative, several of them, so that you get the very best insight into what the plans are from Project 2025, who the experts, who the authors are, and without filling up the next 3 hours, let's go to, let's have a little fun with number 2. You can see it. I wish I read more about Project 2025 before the election. Really. Number 3, please. All right. This is a template of what I did. For example, this is the Federal Trade Commission. This chapter was written by Adam Cardoon, and he's a law professor at Michigan State. He served in Trump's Secretary of Commerce as assistant secretary. And another person from the Federalist Society. So what I tried to do is, as I said, put the name of the person, their chapter, and then a couple of bullets about what they recommend. And I apologize for, it's a big room with a lot of people. It's overwhelming. So is Project 2025. Oh, well, that is, okay. It's really pretty simple, and you'll see this a lot. Let me say that throughout the different chapters, I'll try to also highlight for you what I call themes and threads. There are talking points about these pillars that we went over that make their way throughout all of these different federal agencies, and I'll try to, if I can remember from my notes, let you know what I think are the themes and the threads that are reflected in this stuff. This one is eliminate the Federal Trade Commission. That's great. But the theme here is throughout Project 2025, which is enforcement powers in any and all federal agencies. They all have, associate directors for enforcement, very strong legal, staff to carry out that agency's responsibility. One of the themes and threads throughout Project 2025 is to migrate all such legal responsibility, enforcement, and authority to to the Department of Justice. And that way, the Attorney General, number 2, must be an acolyte of the President, so the President can push all the buttons and have all the unitary presidential authority to tell the Department of Justice what to do, instead of independent legal structure throughout the government for each agency to do its job. Move it all to the DOJ, make the DOJ not arm's length like we've had since forever, but the Department of Justice and the Attorney General under the thumb of the President. That's a theme or a thread that you'll see. Let's go to slide 7, please. Slide 7 and 8 speak to trade, and that's our friend Peter Navarro, who was Trump's assistant to the President in charge of the Office of Trade Policy. His thread is China. China, 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 and that is a theme throughout Project 2025. It's 52 pages on trade, which is by far the largest component of Project 2025. And his voice, maybe to answer your question, your good question, instead of talking about the conservative movement, arm's length kind of as a third party, almost academic in its voice, Navarro talks about Donald Trump. And he talks about these are recommendations for the second Trump presidency. So he oversteps that bound and just puts it out there. Next slide, number 8. Stop trade with China. I don't know what that means. Increase Chinese tariffs to the point that all trade with China is blocked. Ban Chinese social media in America. Ban Chinese investment in our high-tech industry. Ban U.S. dependence on Chinese supply chains like medicine and silicon chips. Eliminate all visas for Chinese students and visitors to come to America. Close all Confucius institutes, which are at universities across America for people to have experiences, academic experiences back and forth. That's our friend Peter Navarro. All right, how about slide 13, please? This is Department of the Treasury. When I saw the Department of Treasury chapter had 3 authors, Walton, Moore, and Burton. I know them. I just thought they looked like Larry Moe and Curly. Repeal the Dodd-Frank Act, especially its broad authority designed to guard against bailouts, and eliminate Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Where does this stuff come from? And then, here's another thread. Move the Coast Guard and the ATF back to the Department of the Treasury to enhance border security. This is a thread which is maximize the militaristic guarding of our southern border and essentially build the wall and close it. So that's Larry Miller. Number 14. This is Department of Commerce, written by Thomas Gilman, who was Trump's Assistant Secretary of Commerce. Again, I don't know these people. Reverse Biden's precipitous economic decline and we need to counter communist China. Here's another thread. Privatize, eliminate, consolidate operations in the U.S. Department of Commerce. Replace its career leadership. And important to our area, I don't understand this. Dismantle the National Oceanographic and whatever. NOAA. Thank you. Dismantle NOAA, which of course includes the National Weather Service and the National Marine Fisheries Group and all sorts of agencies. I don't know. And that's important to our area because there are quite a few NOAA installations in Boulder and throughout the state of Colorado. I'm not quite sure what that means. Is it climate change? How about number 17, please? The theme here is we're back to Judeo-Christian values. This is the Department of Labor. This is Jonathan Berry, who was a senior official at Trump's Department of Labor, and he clerked for Justice Alito. Lucky him. At the heart of our conservative promise, here we go again, is a resolve to reclaim the role of each American worker as a protagonist in his or her own life and restore the family as a centerpiece of American life, the Judeo-Christian tradition. Stretching back to Genesis, we're getting a little lecture here, and due respect to the rabbi. Is Genesis right? I would, because this Judeo-Christian tradition always recognized that fruitful work is integral to human dignity as service to God. So, on day one, issue executive orders to reverse the DEI revolution, eliminate racial classifications, eliminate critical race theory, rescind all regulations that prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, etc. I would take the last bullet down to cruelty. We're going to cap and phase H-2A agricultural workers' visas, requiring that federal contract employers must have at least 70% of white, not white, just U.S. citizens, and change the law that requires employers to hire Americans first. That's why I said it steps beyond the Judeo-Christian promise to hypocrisy. Number 18? Yeah, well, number 18 is the Department of Justice. This is the DOJ, and this is our friend again, Gene Hamilton. You know all about him. Works with Stephen Miller. The DOJ has lost its way. Forfeiting the trust of the American people, it's captured by unaccountable bureaucratic managerial classes and radical left ideologues. Oh boy. DOJ is political and corrupt. This is where I get into, I don't know what it is. My granddaughter would say, wait, what? He wants to affirm the separation of power. Constitutionally immutable. There's 3 branches of government, so far so good, that retain the right and the obligation to assess constitutionality, and that's the foundation for the separation of powers. Thank you for that lecture. But then he goes on, the DOJ must fall under the direct supervision of the president. That litigation decisions must be made consistent with the president's agenda. We must ensure that the DOJ, the Attorney General, and all federal prosecutors take positions that are consistent with those of the president and his appointees throughout the government. So this is not real, is correct. Who are these people? Where did they come from? Okay, how about number 19, please? Here's another theme and thread, and it's drill, drill, drill throughout Project 2025. This is our friend William Perry Pendley getting back at us for him losing his job. No other initiative is as important under a conservative president than a restoration of the Department of Interior's historic role to manage the nation's vast storehouse of hydrocarbons. Much of it is yet to be discovered. Therefore, we revoke the National Environmental Policy Act, reinstate onshore oil and gas sale leases, conduct maximum offshore oil and gas sales to maximize production, including Alaska, restart immediately the domestic coal leasing program in Wyoming and Montana, restart Trump's executive order to open the Alaska National Petroleum Reserve to leasing and development, and abandon plans to withdraw Colorado and New Mexico wilderness from development. That is to say, open them up to energy and mineral production. This is our friend from Wyoming getting back at us for losing his job, I guess. But, all right, 21, please. This is a nightmare. This is the Department of Health and Human Services, Roger Severino. He's a child of Colombian immigrants. He served as Trump's director of the Office of Civil Rights at Human Services. This is a 48-page monster. Oh boy, we need to protect the fundamental right to life and uphold the bodily integrity rooted in biological reality. From the moment of conception, every human being possesses dignity. Ensure that all health and human service programs are rooted in deep respect for innocent human life from the day one until natural death. Abortion and euthanasia are not health care. Radical doctors inside and outside the government promote harmful identity politics that replace biological sex with subjective notions of gender identity. This is a theme and a thread all the way through. Families are comprised of a married father, mother, and their children. That's the foundation of a well-ordered nation and a healthy society. Biden's policies focus on LGBTQ plus equity, subsidizing single motherhood, disincentivizing work, and I have to stand back up. Repeal and penalizing marriage. Repeal all those policies, replace them with programs that support the formation of stable, married, nuclear families that are known as Needed to Beaver. With a string of pearls and high heels. Got to have a little humor. Now we pick on the CDC. CDC should eliminate programs and projects that do not respect human life. We have to ensure that abortion is not health care. Abortion pills pose the single greatest threat to unborn children. Let's go on to the next slide. More HHS. At the Food and Drug Administration, stop promoting or approving mail-order businesses selling abortion pills. Let's see. Oh, the NIH, end its human embryonic stem cell registry. Pursue ethical alternative methods of research. Medicare Advantage, oh boy. I guess some money changed hands here. Encourage direct competition between Medicare Advantage and private plans. Because Medicare Advantage is the major alternative to traditional Medicare for America's large and growing cohort of seniors. It provides health care with a rich set of benefits that Medicare cannot do at a reasonable cost. Medicare Advantage earns consistently high marks for superior performance. Did you know that? Make Medicare Advantage the default enrollment option. So when you sign up for Medicare, I guess, it'll be automatically sign you up for Medicare Advantage as the default, instead of you being able to go out and shop and find a secondary payer that you want. Abolish the government's drug price negotiation programs in Medicare. That's timely. And eye-opening is I thought, nowhere in the 42 pages did the author recommend that the Affordable Care Act be abolished. He talked about quite a few tweaks and changes, but I think that's sort of falling off the landscape. If for all these years of the Affordable Care Act working, and you know, it's not perfect, but it's working fine, and millions of people are signed up for health care through the ACA. There's no real, I didn't see any real hot item in Project 2025 that said get rid of it. So there's a little piece of sensibility anyway. 26, please. The theme here I saw was radical hypocrisy and cruelty. You enjoyed this. The Department of Education, this is Lindsay Burke, who's a fellow at the Heritage Foundation. The first sentence, in her chapter, quote, federal education policy should be limited and ultimately the Federal Department of Education should eliminate. This came out of nowhere. I don't know what, follow the path of Milton Friedman and his writings from 1955. I don't know, evidently he's still a darling of the conservative movement, but I was 3 years old. I don't know about you, but that's another theme. Milton Friedman is quoted and supported in several places. What does that mean? Well, fund K-12 education, but decisions are made by families and parents. We should not have the government direct where the funding goes. So the idea, I guess, is all federal taxpayer dollars for education go as a block grant to the states. And the states, without strings, and without federal and state bureaucrats telling them what to do, decide what happens with this federal block grant for education. Safeguard student civil rights, reject gender ideology, you know that's critical race theory. Move the Office of Civil Rights, which is a real watchdog for our kids' education, move that to the Department of Justice. Back to that theme and thread again. Here's the hypocrisy that I just pulled right out of the document. I mean, stop executive overreach. Congress should set policy, not precedents through pen and phone executive orders. Well, I know. Wait, what? That's all through Project 2025. Completely spin off federal college financial aid programs and loan obligations to a new government corporation with an agency head and a board of trustees appointed by the president. So, I guess that's part of the Department of Ed going away, is you got to do something with those obligations and federal financial aid system, so spin it off to a corporation. Rescind federal restrictions on charter schools. Rescind Title IX regulations so that sex is defined as the gender that you were assigned at birth. All ongoing investigations on Title IX should be dropped. Rescind the National Education Association's congressional charter. Remove the false impression that federal taxpayers support the political activities of the special interest group. That's so. Any
I love safeguard student civil rights to get shot at school.
and then it's a hypocrisy. Part 2 of Department of Education, hypocrisy again. The federal government is telling us what we can and cannot do. No public education employee shall use a name to address a student other than the name listed on the student's birth certificate, nor use a pronoun to address that student that is different from the student's biological sex. I don't know. There's an awful lot of sex in this document, you know? If you want a copy on the way out, we were selling them in the lobby for a couple of bucks. Biden recklessly engaged in a policy fetish to forgive and cancel student loans. The next administration should work with Congress to amend the Higher Education Act to stop this abuse. Pursue antitrust against college accreditors. Eliminate competitive grant programs. Reduce spending on formula grant programs. And eliminate, my background's in higher ed, so forgive me. Eliminate the PLUS loan program, which provides graduate student loans. Whatever. That's all part of dismantling the Department of Ed and its authority and responsibility in programming under the Higher Education Act. Number 28, please. This is just a sampling. How are we doing? Darren Bax from the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. This is the Department of Ag. Radical. Biden administration pushed a radical effort to reshape USDA's work. Remember, their mission is too broad, serving as a major welfare agency. It has programs like food stamps. Issue an executive order to accomplish required actions the new administration should announce through executive order. Remove America from any association with the United Nations. I think it is back to Milton Friedman. And other efforts to push sustainable development schemes. Repeal the federal sugar program. I don't know something about sugar. Move the USDA food and nutrition programs to the Department of Health and Human Services, which is dissonant because the other authors want to get rid of it. So I don't know. Cruelty, in my mind. Order USDA schools meals program leadership to serve only children in need. That is to say, only on students in middle-income homes. USDA should not provide meals to students during the summer and students in summer school classes. After all, the USDA has become, in effect, a federal catering program. Okay. And then eliminate the USDA's publication of dietary guidelines, you know, that triangle, whatever it is, you know, just get rid of that. This is federal media agencies. This is Maura Namdar. She was Assistant Secretary of State, and then Mike Gonzalez was a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation. I picked this one because it's just so, overall, federal media agencies, rather than providing news and information in an accurate way and promote and support democracy, is mismanaged, disorganized, reflective, and rife with waste, nepotism, redundant programs, and unnecessary hiring. And then he picks on Radio Free Europe. They pick on radio. I mean, that goes back to before we were kids. Radio Free Europe. The recent edition of Radio Free Europe's, this is crazy, Hungarian language service falls outside the intended scope of Radio Free Europe's charter. Well, Radio Free Europe's Hungary program is particularly targeted against Viktor Orban, who's an authoritarian dictator with a small d or a capital D, whatever. In Hungary, of course, that's the mission of Radio Free Europe, is to try to offset his influence and his lies. But my personal theory is because he's an authoritarian and a friend, an acolyte of Donald Trump. So that particular item made its way into Project 2025. And here it comes again. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting, all Republican presidents have recognized that public funding for domestic broadcasting is a mistake. Stop funding the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, strip public funding from NPR, PBS, God bless you, and any other leftist broadcaster. Just take money away from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. We watch that every night. Wonderful. We have three more, and then time is looking good. This theme to me is devious and isolation. Number 32. devious, and isolationist, which really is not standard fare for the Republican Party. This is Kyron Skinner, Trump's policy director of planning at the State Department. Bullet 1, absolute allegiance. Focus on the State Department on the needs and goals of the next president. This requires hand-picked political leadership, foreign service, and civil service personnel who shares the president's vision. Devious. Notwithstanding that this is just back to your good point again. How can they publish this stuff? Your good point? It's there. Notwithstanding the Senate confirmation process, the president should exert leverage in the Senate to place State Department appointees directly into their roles pending confirmation. This ensures that the department has immediate senior political leadership. It forces the Senate to act on nominees' appointments instead of being allowed to engage in dilatory tactics to cripple the department's functionality for weeks or months. That was done to some extent in the first Trump administration, firing political appointees and putting people in right away as actors. There were a lot of actors, in more ways than one. Despite it being a dud, there were things that took place. That means that, remembering the slide, in 2017 they were ready, but 2025 it will be. All non-confirmed senior appointees should be added by the president's transition team and be in place the first day. And it's also double speed. Right-size refugee admissions. Close the southern border. Shift the national security screening border, and this is an indefinite curtailment, refugee admissions until the crisis can be contained. Isolation. Restore Trump's approach for international organizations, fund only those that serve our interests. Right? You saw there was one about the UN getting out of the UN, and you'll see some more of it. Number 33? 33? Yeah, it's radical, and my theme is slam the door. This is Homeland Security. This is written by Ken Cuccinelli, fellow at the Heritage Foundation. That's where he ended up. So his first sentence is get rid of it. Pursue legislation to dismantle the Department of Homeland Security. Move all immigration stuff to one cabinet lead agency. Move FEMA to the Interior Department out of Homeland Security. Move the Coast Guard to the Department of Justice. I don't understand, okay. Cut the Secret Service, move it over to the Department of Justice and Treasury. Privatize the TSA. I'll leave that up to you whether you think that's good or not. And dismantle the rest of the Homeland Security Department. Why? Like every other federal agency, this agency is bloated, bureaucratic, and expensive. Full of wokeness and weaponization against Americans whom the left perceives as its political enemies. Okay. Slam the door. Stop the availability of cheap foreign labor. Cease the H-2B visa. We talked about that. Create a policy like Title 42 Public Health Authority that used against COVID-19 to expel people. Eliminate the T and the U visas because victimization is not a basis for immigration benefits. Repeal the temporary status, protected status. Repeal the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, which provides numerous immigration benefits to folks who are running away from unaccompanied children, where parents are trying to send their kids across the border. And FEMA, we have a son who worked with FEMA. FEMA manages all grants for the Department of Homeland Security. These grants have become pork for states. I don't think so, but localities and, special grants, take them away from and just terminate these kind of grants from FEMA. We just got back from a trip to Vermont, where a couple of $1 million has been granted quickly to the state because so many highways and dams towns have been flooded by, we had 10 inches of rain last week in one day. So we want to get rid of all those grant programs from FEMA. That was 34? No, 34 is 34? Okay, so 34. Okay, this is bug out. This is Department of Defense. The theme is bug out. DOD is deeply rooted, deeply troubled. A disturbing decay makes a markers. My eyes are just going. Bug out of NATO. The U.S. allies should field the great. Yeah, defense planning should focus on China. Bug out of NATO. U.S. allies should field the great majority of conventional forces required to deter Russia. Rely instead that the U.S. primarily for our nuclear deterrent. Reduce our American posture of military in Europe. Bug out, in my words, is bug out on Israel. Sustain, you have to read this 5 times. Sustain support for Israel, but empower our Gulf partners to take responsibility for their own coastal, air, and missile defenses. So support Israel, but pull back the military. Bug out of NATO, reduce our force posture in Europe, focus on China. Bug out on South Korea. South Korea should take the lead in its conventional defense against the North. Here we go again. Strengthen protections for chaplains to carry out their ministry according to the tenets of their faith. Eliminate Marxist indoctrination and divisive critical race theory programs and abolish newly established DEI programs. Focus on the Space Force. Reverse Biden's defensive posture. He established offensive capabilities. This is, by the way, this is Christopher Miller, is the writer. Served in several roles in the Trump Department of Defense. I really had problems with this last bullet. And my smart aleck moniker is, hey Christopher, thanks for betraying America's secrets. With much love, you run. Eyes are open. Strengthen our homeland ballistic missile defense. Now it's time for a lecture. The United States currently deploys 44 ground-based interceptor missiles as part of our defense system to defend the homeland against North Korea. But as North Korea improves its missile system, we should respond to the threat. We should buy at least 64 more next-generation missiles, which are more advanced, and put those in place for additional interceptors, rather than the Biden administration's plans to buy only 20. So he's putting numbers and tactics, and he worked at the Department of Defense, so I guess he had access to that information. But you don't put it in a document like this that's distributed on the internet worldwide, and Iran says, thank you, Christopher. I don't know. Maybe they didn't have editors for this thing. Water. Thanks for your patience. A theme and a thread that's not isolated in one Project 2025 chapter. I'll let you know. I think it's, yeah. It's not the words of one author, but the thread is Christian nationalism. Rather, that theme is touched by several authors. The so-called Judeo-Christian tradition, doublespeak. Slide 38, please. One of the leaders, way back on that leadership slide, is Russell Vaught. He's a top-line co-author of the Project 2025, a top contender, evidently, to be Trump's White House Chief of Staff if he is elected in November. He touts his current connections to Donald Trump. He claims he's close enough to hand-deliver proposals created by Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation. Here's his quote: "We are a Christian nation. It is time to rehabilitate Christian nationalism as part of our mission to embrace the country's Judeo-Christian worldview value system. We have created battle plans and we will implement them." That is a quote from Russell Vaught in Project 2025. Do I need to read that again or just let it sit with you for a minute? We have created the plans and we're ready to implement. It goes back to that warrior terminology that I talked about and what you've seen in the press. These are warriors. Okay, let's put an end to this. I want to close with a recap of what I would suggest are the 13 Project 2025 themes and threads that help bring it together. It says go to slide 35. Fast and furious. Throughout Project 25, issue scores of day one executive orders. Authoritarian. Establish the so-called unitary presidency, which maybe you've read about, and that is a constitutional theory that the president, as a chief executive, has almost unlimited power, and thank you, Supreme Court, for reaffirming that. No delay, immediately transform the government leadership with thousands of Emily Murphys. Despot, manipulate the Senate confirmation process, put Trump's leadership acolytes in place on day one as acting. We've learned about the Heritage Foundation's agenda: oil, gas, coal, minerals, drill, baby, drill. The theme is liar. I don't know these people. Wow. Reliance on Milton Friedman's writings. I'm going to have to go back to those and read those a little bit. War on DEI and wokeness. Reestablish faith-based policies. Not Governor Rockefeller's approach. Isolationism. China, 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 and bug out of every place else. Close the southern border, period. Privatize as much as we can. End U.S. foreign aid. Let private investors do that stuff. Protect life. Absolute control of a woman's body and put an end to reproductive rights. And cruelty, which is throughout, including the Ag Department wanting to end most K-12 meal programs. Those are what I saw as the themes and the threads. I think there's one more slide. Just leave us with a smile, I hope. Slide 36. If you're tired, you're poor, and you're childless cat lady. We have two options here. We're at 8 o'clock, which is to see a couple more of these slides, the federal agencies, and/or entertain your questions. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is this intended to only be public policies, or does it talk about
Is this designed and targeted to be just for Trump and if he was elected, or is it more global? Or, yeah. I take credit for the, I guess that's right, for imprinting the name Trump throughout. If you see a lot of the interviews and literature about this document, from its leadership and its sponsors, its check writers. They like to push that it's a conservative playbook for a conservative movement and a conservative administration, not just for Donald, to be landed on Donald Trump's desk. So that's, in fairness, that's the way it's presented publicly. Any other questions? John?
Name Senator Tommy Tuberville about the implementation of this.
I didn't catch it.
I think he wants the name Tommy Tuberville up here as somebody who's going to be implementing some of these.
No. There's plenty of Coach Walls, but no Coach Tuberville in this thing. And we'll also have John's attention. Can you tell us about yard signs and, let me walk over there.
Across the yard signs tonight, there's sort of a limited quantity, but everybody's asking about presidential signs. I believe those will be available right after room to amaze. They're shooting for that, be a big kickoff on that. So that's coming out pretty soon. But everybody wants a sign for the president. But during the election period, October, 2 weeks of November, you're allowed to have 4 signs in your yard at a time. So there's room for plenty of the other candidates. And if you have more favorite candidates than 4, you can rotate those. People get good. If you leave your signs all the same, people get jaded. So move them around, you will surprise people, and there will be plenty of signs down. So far, it's the months of October, 2 weeks in November, or your 4th. Right now, you can have 2 signs year-round. It's a Colorado policy that allows you, even, no matter what your HOA says, you can have 2 signs year-round. But that does count landscaping and painters, but not real estate.
Thank you, John. You know, John does a lot for the Democrats of Anthem Ranch, and we really appreciate it. Got a question back here?
I tried to access the document, Project 2025, and I couldn't because they wanted so much on my personal information. So how can you now get it more easily? And can you also get those videos?
Okay.
They
So-
wanted everything about me.
Really? Okay. Yeah, if you, she tried to get Project 2025 on your computer, but it asked her to sign in and provide personal information, probably because it's fundraising. Probably wanted your phone number and email address and where you live, and the answer is no. I had no trouble getting to, there's on the Heritage Foundation website, they posted Project 2025 in its entirety, and it didn't ask me for donation.
Videos,
The video of John Oliver?
training videos.
Oh, the training videos? It was published on the website ProPublica, and ProPublica broke the story on August the 10th. And I believe in the article there's a place where you can click and see these things. Some of them are long, because they're detailed training videos. They're not just one speaker for 4 minutes. Any other questions? Do you want, yeah, over here?
This was a really nice presentation, Rob. You gave us a lot of information and how awful this is. Could you speculate sort of the underlying motives? Is it just as simple to say it's power and money, or is it more complicated?
That's politics at its best, it's power and money, no matter what, irrespective of party. But in my mind, it goes back to that slide about the gun, that there was such disappointment. I mean, some pundits would say that when Donald Trump was elected, they really weren't ready because they didn't expect to win. I don't know if that's just commentary or how true it is, but certainly there was a lesson learned that you have to be ready. And to their credit, the power brokers, the 100+ organizations and the check writers who did the $22 million said, "No, never again." So it was, this is a playbook. This is, we're not going to have the dud. And so it's a lesson learned for Democrats that we also, in 45 days, your ballot is going to be mailed to you. We have very little time. Little commentary, at least in my mind, it's time for the Democrat Party to show its playbook and tell us detailed policy and what the plans are, and to put Kamala Harris in front of the TV camera in interviews, and I don't think the debate's going to happen. We've got to make sure our plan and our policies are out there as well, because the other party is ready. Questions? You want to see a couple more slides? Question back here? I'm ready.
But the Colorado Sun had an article of the implications of the 2025 document for the Department of Interior and Colorado and Utah lands. They did very, last Sunday or 2 Sundays ago. So you can just search Colorado Sun 2025 public lands. And see much more about that.
Thank you. Any other questions? What? Okay. She let us know that the Colorado Sun recently published an article about land management in Utah and Colorado, and what could happen, good, bad, and ugly. So you'll check that out, because there'll be more detail for you, especially because I have one quick slide on the Department of Interior. That'll be much more detailed for you.
Well,
Yes,
I have
I'm done.
something to say, if you're all done, Rob. A big thank you to Rob and Lynn for all